I mean, I really had some high hopes they were going to get it back to me just half an hour. I like the Prime Minister's being held to account, but it doesn't half drag on. Let's talk about what obviously would be the big issue. I mean, we know already Kemi Badenoch did raise what everyone expected to do, the issue of this rape grooming gangs scandal, and whether or not there should be a full inquiry. There's going to be a vote later in Parliament on that. So how did those exchanges go? I imagine not particularly smoothly and calmly on both sides.
All 6 questions on rape gangs, as Kemi Badenoch would call them, grooming gangs, as Keir Starmer would call them. Very angry, kind of almost very menacingly serious in terms of what they were talking about. He talked about her record on this as well. Very, very interesting in that regard. Jess Phillips sitting 2 away from Keir Starmer, making lots of comments, throwing comments across, pointing out that the recommendations from the Professor Alexis Jay report, the big report that happened previously, that the Conservatives in 18 months didn't implement any of them.
Fair point.
The Conservatives saying, well, you've had 6 months, you're saying you're working at pace, why haven't you implemented them yet? But still, war of words about that. This is really nasty today. This is really, I think, Parliament at a bad point as well.
Very much detect, even quite apart from this being such a very, very difficult and emotional issue, that actually these two people really don't like each other.
No,
Shall
they
we
don't.
have any watch and a listen of the first clip? This is what they had to say.
Once in 8 years did she stand here and say what she's just said. Not once in 8 years. They didn't act on the recommendations. They want a national inquiry. We had a national inquiry, the J inquiry, the J report. 20 recommendations, not a single one implemented. Not a single one implemented. And she said you can do 2 things at once. You can't kill the bill this afternoon, wreck that bill, and protect children.
Oh, right, I think we were actually supposed to play a different clip before then. We've got a bit of a problem with our tech there.
This was towards the end of PMQs,
right,
where Keir Starmer really summed up what he was saying in all of the different aspects, essentially saying, why are the Conservatives jumping on this bandwagon? And he was very, very personal against Kemi Badenoch, saying that she hadn't raised it as Children's Minister, she hadn't raised it as Women and Equalities Minister. Why
so
was
it was
she raising it
within her remit to raise it. Now, she's raised lots of other big issues. I mean, she's spoken. I've been a big fan of Kemi Badenoch for a long time, and I know there's been a lot of Tory members. Well, they voted for her to be leader.
She mentioned the Tavistock stuff, for example, saying
she came out on the on all the scandals involving, the so-called trans kids. No such thing as a trans kid, but she's spoken out on a lot of issues, which other MPs tiptoed around, and it is surprising, and it's a fair argument for her to say, like, you're politicking on this, but it's a perfectly fair argument for Keir Starmer to hit back and say the same to her.
Yes, it is, and certainly he is saying that Elon Musk has had 200 tweets since Christmas, mainly about British politics, specifically about grooming gangs, rape gangs, paedophile gangs, whatever you want to call them. And essentially, Keir Starmer saying, you're jumping on the bandwagon here, you didn't care about this previously, this wasn't an issue until Elon Musk brought it up, therefore why do you care now? And they've got this big bill this afternoon, the Children and Wellbeing Bill, which has a lot of different provisions in it. We're talking about changes to the national curriculum, for example, various different issues, including child protection as well. The Conservatives are putting forward a wrecking amendment, essentially saying they want an inquiry into this specifically.
But that vote isn't going to pass. Labour are going to block it. Again, this is really, and again, this is where the politicking comes in, because Labour have a massive majority. They're 170, slightly less as working majority. They can basically block anything. In which case, there is that argument that this is just so you can have something on your election leaflets, perhaps in local areas. We're told that some 50 towns and cities across Britain where grooming gangs are still happening, saying, look, your local MP voted against having an inquiry. Now, the Prime Minister said that he did say he'd met with victims this morning. Again, whenever they do it that morning, it's always a bit of a giveaway. I wonder how that came about. He says they want action now, and the trouble with things like inquiries, it wouldn't report until maybe the start of the next decade, would delay things to 2031. And again, these things don't have to take this long. I mean, Craig McKinley, the Tory peer, he was on in the last half hour talking about how, what about a task force, something that, let's get action, let's deal with not only the people who haven't been prosecuted yet, but also the people who turned a blind eye. I mean, that's kind of a middle ground I think more people would be happy with.
Well, the interesting thing is that we've had these local inquiries in places like Telford. Oldham have been asking for one, but the question is, should there be a sort of national inquiry? I actually spoke to the guy who'd done the Telford one on Friday, a really interesting KC, who said actually you can can go to victims and survivors' homes, you can have a cup of tea with them and talk to them in a non-adversarial way, get the information and talk about what's happening locally. The question for a national inquiry, much more adversarial, much more courtroom-esque, and also...
And it's the lawyers who benefit the most.
Well, exactly, and can take a very long time as well. So, I mean, Keir Starmer saying the Alexis J report took 7 years. It mentioned Rotherham once, and Kemi Badenoch pointed that out.
Yeah.
And, you know, this wasn't an inquiry into grooming gangs per se.
This is the thing.
This is a wider inquiry.
This is the thing, exactly. But again, not implemented anyway. I mean, which is extraordinary. One of the lines that Kemi Badenoch used, actually, I'm so unfortunate we haven't got the clip, was saying that he urging the Prime Minister to be a leader, not a lawyer.
That's right.
And that is... But that's a really strong line in terms of a lot of people feel that about him. He approaches everything, you know, as a lawyer.
Yeah.
Like, you know, whether it's international affairs, whether it's you know, horrific crimes like this, everything. You can just hear the voice, can't you?
And he has pointed to his record, saying that he has pushed this issue many times. He said that he was the chief prosecutor when the Rochdale grooming gangs were prosecuted, for example, and that he pushed that.
Yeah. But he was also the chief prosecutor when the Rochdale gangs weren't prosecuted for 4 or 5 years.
Many years, yeah.
That's the thing. So there's a view that he has done a good job. You know, when he actually got on top of this, he changed the rules, he allowed, you know, these things to go ahead. But for many years they didn't. Well, he was in charge then as well.
And Kemi Badenoch pointed that out and said, look, you can do two things at once. You can implement the the Professor Alexis J recommendations, the 20 recommendations. That can be done whilst having a more focused inquiry into what is happening with rape gangs still within various parts of England.
Absolutely.
And there was a very compelling part where she said, actually, later on today, Keir Starmer is going to be asking people, his own MPs in various areas, including Derby, Oldham, various other places, to vote against this inquiry, which is a very compelling piece as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I was interested you mentioned the Home Office Minister, Jess Phillips, who's kind of sparked this whole new row. She's Safeguarding Minister. Now, to be fair, she has a very long track record of working, you know, helping women, fighting, you know, domestic violence and on violence against women and girls. She does like to emote, and everything with Jess Phillips is about Jess Phillips and Jess Phillips' feelings a lot of the time, but I think she has been unfairly targeted by Elon Musk, and he called her a rape genocide apologist, and she should be in jail. She's not those things, and again, I particularly hate people using the word genocide when it's not appropriate. Someone has done the old historics of this, because there is always a tweet, isn't there? And she's spoken out about, you know, she's had death threats. I mean, she has to have massive levels of security now. That is outrageous. So I don't care what anyone's politics are. That is outrageous and unacceptable. There's sort of language being used against her. Again, that said, so he does that sort of language against her. That doesn't make me make a death threat against her. So the people who are doing this stuff, you know, it's on them as far as I'm concerned. But what a surprise. She has used this sort of language herself on Twitter. She's quite happy to tell people to, you know, pee off and F off and goodness knows what on Twitter. Personally, I'm a fan of this sort of plain speaking, as you know. But in a tweet 2015, she said, "Today I saw George Galloway on the beach. I told him he was a rape apologist." Another thing ticked off the bucket list. In 2015, she also tweeted to Philip Davies, MP, Conservative MP, "Funny, Philip Davies not so interested in retweeting the evidence of violent sexist abuse. He was American and..." I mean, I don't know who he's talking about here. I'm referred to someone as a vile rape apologist. I think I can live with my comments. She referred to someone else as, again, as a rape apologist.
The thing with Jess
Phillips, she
Phillips,
uses a lot of the same language.
She does. Jess Phillips has been through a really tough time in the last few days. That is nothing, as she pointed out yesterday in an interview, nothing in comparison to the women and girls, and they are girls who have been through these horrendous things.
Absolutely.
The point with this is that government is really, really difficult. It is difficult to do things and please people and get results. And in opposition is frustrating for many people. It's frustrating because you don't have any power, but it's also easy because you can basically say what you want. And we have a situation where Labour, on a number of fronts, whether it's the WASPy women, whether it's the winter fuel allowance, whatever it is, they are in a situation with this inquiry where they've called for things to happen. They haven't happened in opposition. They're now in government. You're it. You're it.
You know, tough.
You know, sort it out.
I think Labour have genuinely been quite stunned about quite how hard it is to be in office. Yeah, what a surprise. Just to say, also, Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader, he asked Keir Starmer, when he got up to speak, to bring in reforms to party funding. So he says, so power in this country lies with voters and not with Elon Musk. Of course, this related to that Elon Musk had originally said, of course, that he would give up to $100 million, we understand, to the Reform Party. Keir Starmer replied, I think we all had a smile when, and he's referring to Farage, when he said how cool it was to have the support of Musk, only for Musk to say he should be removed. It's very difficult, this one, isn't it? I don't want anyone being able to make big donations to political parties, but if we didn't have people doing that, then, it wouldn't, Reform wouldn't have so much help. Taxpayers would pay for it. Well, again, also, but then smaller parties wouldn't get a leg up because as we saw with the Electoral Commission, there are rules at the last election limiting how much, like Nigel Farage didn't get to have, even though he had much more support than some other parties, didn't get to be on some of the podiums in some of the leaders' debates. But, I mean, yeah, there is quite a lot of schadenfreude going on in the Commons, isn't there, over this?
Yeah, there certainly is, and Elon Musk has sent, as I say, over 200 different tweets about this. He's taken on Keir Starmer, he's taken on Jess Phillips, he's taken on, or the inclination. But what I find interesting, I don't know about you, Julia, saying, who is this international person? What does he know about British politics? Well, I've never been to Afghanistan, but I've plenty of opinions about what happened there.
Yeah, that said, Elon Musk seems to be supremely uninformed about our parliamentary democracy.
Did you know, random fact, his first wife, her father was the head of National Crime Squad.
That is a random fact.
Yeah.
Well played.
Yeah.
Well, there you are. You learned something, Dave. So listen, you learned something. Well, anyway, Peter's here. Oh, and Benedict speaking as well. Benedict, I'm sorry we didn't get to play all the clips, but just a quick thought on what that exchange at PMQs. From the sound of it, who do you think won?
I think Kemi Badenoch won, but it was a slightly larger open goal than normal, and she does have a bit of a track record of missing the open goals when there, so I'm not sure she gets kudos for that. But, this is something that is going to keep rumbling, and I don't think it's going to cover either party in glory. No. So a win, but at what cost?
Yeah, you didn't do it, you're not doing it. Again, that's the thing. I mean, fundamentally, I don't know how long it will last on the financial front, but certainly on the policy front, I think the Tories are going to have to face a lot of years of, yeah, but you didn't do it when you were in power.